This is Germany, the land of my birth and boyhood. Here once stood homes filled with the voices of people, streets beating with the throb of busy life. Now there is only silence and ruin, and these ruins are the spawning ground of hatred and distrust. But they can bring forth peace and brotherhood instead of hatred, if the peoples of the world understand one another. It is out of this search for understanding that my story comes. My name is Fritz. My story begins when the Church of the Brethren invited me, along with other European youth, to spend a year in the United States. Upon reaching America, I came to the little community of Bridgewater in the state of Virginia. In the distance was the campus of the college I would attend. From the very beginning, I found a warm welcome. The man who met me was the pastor of a local church. I appreciated such a kind-hearted greeting from one who held so important a place in the life of the community. He was most understanding and seemed eager to point out things of interest and make me feel at home. I found warmth in the beauty of the scenery, some of it not unlike that of the countryside at home. The same gentle hand of nature has molded the fertile farmlands and rolling pastures of my lands and this. Dotted by farms and villages, stretching farther than the eye could see, was the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, a valley of abundance, a valley of homes where people live close to the heart of nature. Here, too, there was silence, the silence of nature at work, in the growing of grass and trees, in the flowing of rivers that stay the hand of drought. I saw the homes where people lived. Some were like this, not mansions, but comfortable, with fine lawns and flowering shrubs. And there were homes like these. America, too, has people who are not wealthy. On the farms were large painted barns for storing crops and housing animals, and often fine homes shaded by broad green trees. I first thought this was an apartment building, only to learn later that it was a poultry house. Poultry is an outstanding product of the valley. The little feathered creatures receive a lot of attention. They are hatched, fed, and sent to market by the thousands. Healthy little fellows, aren't they? They huddle up, stretch their tiny wings, and bask in the sun, little realizing that they'll end up as someone's Sunday dinner. Maybe you have heard that the American way of life is easy. It is easier than some, but it isn't a life of idleness. In this community, people live close to the soil, farmers who till their land. The pastor often found them in the fields when he came to visit. Some, like this man, are planning to leave a rich rural heritage for children and grandchildren. He is contributing to the community by the animals he produces. He insists that his sheep be healthy, clean, and producers of the best in wool and offspring. His cattle, too, have to pass close inspection. They are the best of animals, given the finest of care. There are 3 ways to milk a cow, I discovered. The calf does it one way, but the farmer uses other methods. Some did it by machine. Others did it the way we do it at home. The community required more than farmers. Others had to work too. There was the merchant who provided the things the people of the community had to buy. The hardware store sold the farmer tools, machinery, supplies, and seeds. The merchant depended upon the people as a market for his goods, while the people in turn depended upon him to supply the articles they needed. There was also the grocer to supply the food they did not raise themselves. The rural mail carrier delivered the mail and collected the letters to be posted. Linking the farms of the valley with the farthest corner of the world, the mailman in his trusty Ford makes his daily round. The banker as in every land, loaned people money and provided a place of safe deposit for those who saved their funds for future needs. The doctor was always busy, serving rich and poor alike, preventing and healing disease, giving a word of comfort as he worked, assuring his patients that it could have been worse and that it will be better in a few days. A nation like America requires machines, machines that perform the miraculous, and the makers of the machines are regulated to a great extent by the whistles of factories. Even the children had their work. For 9 months out of the year they ride to school on the bus. Not all of them like to go to school, especially when there are books to study. When the children aren't studying, they are playing. Learning to play together is a part of learning to live together. If all of school were like this, it would be a cinch. All these things and more I found in the life of the community. But I want to tell you of another community, the college. My story wouldn't be complete if I didn't relate my experiences at Bridgewater College. It wasn't as large as most American colleges, only 450 students, but all that it needed was there. Bridgewater has a lovely tree-shaded campus that gives one a sense of security in its permanence, a sense of freedom in the width of its boundaries. Some of the buildings are old, standing as monuments to the tradition and heritage of her founders. Some of them are new, expressing a spirit of progress and growth. The old bell tower on Memorial Hall symbolizes man's upward reach for truth, its ringing a symbol of the proclaiming of it. Bridgewater, like our colleges in Europe, is a college for both men and women. Well, young men and women usually marry and live together, so why shouldn't they attend college together? Besides, it helps to make college much more interesting. I like this. I want you to know this man. He is Dr. Warren Bowman, president of the college. As I waited to be introduced to him, I expected his greeting to be rather stiff and formal. To my surprise, he shook hands and invited me to sit down as he would have a close friend. He was eager to hear any questions I wished to ask and to help me feel at home while at his college. Like most American schoolmen, Dr. Bowman makes no distinction between the dignity of working behind a desk as a president and the dignity of working with one's hands in the soil. He likes his garden. Our attempts to teach each other language evoked a great deal of laughter and hilarity. At first, we had a little difficulty in conversation, for very few students could speak any German, and I could barely speak English. But in learning English, I came to really understand the minds of American youth. American youth also have a keen zest for fun and laughter, often resulting in a noisy frolic or prank. And almost anyone could get involved. I did. But underneath it all, there was a rather serious nature, for college was to be only a part of their lives. Having dedicated themselves to some profession, they found it necessary to spend their time in study, for knowledge and truth are not inherited. They must be sought and discovered. And one must also be mindful of that day when final exams will rear their ugly heads. To escape the recurring boredom of books and examinations, the fellows sometimes gathered for bull sessions to exchange ideas and arguments on 1,000 issues, some real and others pretty far-fetched. Wild confusion was the usual upshot of the discussion when the room became a center for more important activities. But through these sessions I got a rather clear picture of the dreams and ambitions of American youth. Americans have been accused of being motivated only by a desire for luxury and ease. All of us have something of this in our makeup, and Americans are certainly no different, but most of the students I knew were guided by higher motives. They desired to live in comfort, of course, but their greatest aim was to contribute to the life of their communities. Some were interested in research and experimentation, challenged by the scientific and technical progress of our modern age. Other young men and women felt called to the field of medicine, to raise the standards of health, to prevent the spread of disease, and to alleviate suffering, whether in their own communities or in the mission fields abroad. Some were planning to enter the field of teaching, a profession that is time-honored and worthy. They were given an opportunity to practice while they prepared. Student teachers are challenged to work for the all-round welfare of those they serve. Many young women prepare themselves to teach home economics, or, what is just as important, to be good homemakers and mothers. Thus they study the arts of cooking, sewing, home management, and child care, knowledge that is very practical. Others enter the field of music, for music, too, enriches life. It arouses sentiment and emotion, and it is an important aid to worship, a means of relaxation and enjoyment. The instructor not only teaches the student to sing his best, but inspires him to put heart and soul into his music. Instrumental music also has its place as given expression through the college band and orchestra. Education at Bridgewater, I found, covers many areas. In the classroom, the students were introduced to the important fields of knowledge. This class in philosophy, for example, is searching into the very reason and nature of life. Or one might specialize in the field of religion, studying Christianity, its history and influence upon civilization. But in whatever class it might be, the students were encouraged to cultivate an understanding of all life and to organize all their learning into a strong philosophy for living. There were no ironclad rules of education. The professor lectured, of course, but he did not sit on a pedestal. The atmosphere was informal, and free discussion was encouraged. The student was urged to do independent, creative thinking and to ask questions on points that were not clear. Also, students might disagree with the teacher's viewpoint, and they reserved the right to do so, which right, I discovered, was often called upon. In the give and take of class discussion, the professor himself sometimes learned a thing or two. Of course, things did get a little dull at times, as classes anywhere in the world are wont to do. But there was usually someone nearby to serve as a conscience and to see that the dreamer's mind didn't come to a complete halt. The most popular aspect of college education took place on the athletic field. American youth have a real zest for all kinds of sports. Proficiency was not a requirement for taking part. There were many sports, and every student was encouraged to play. There was instruction for those who needed it. In baseball, one merely holds the bat so, and then strikes the ball with it. The object of the game is to hit the ball to where no one can catch it. And the farther you can hit the ball, the better your chance of getting on base. See what I mean? But sports included greater values than just recreation. They provided an opportunity for healthy exercise and physical upbuilding, for developing grace and poise. A most important phase of education in our little college was the chapel service. Important as the pursuit of knowledge and the development of healthy minds and bodies may be, there is a greater concept of education, the development of character. The students gathered to worship, to listen to the challenge of great music, to hear the expressed convictions of Christian leaders, to evaluate moral issues and ethical standards, to enter into a real spiritual experience. lest education without the buttressing of character become destructive. Every effort was made to conserve in the students the Christian ideal of life, and the constant aim of the college was to send from the doors of the chapel men and women who would be constructive forces in the moral progress of the world. Aside from work and worship, American youth had their moments of leisure too. One favorite pastime was to relax over a Coke, a hot dog, or a dish of ice cream, while surrounded by a room full of music and the chatter of friends. Others retired to some quiet corner to read, or to indulge in that ancient feminine pastime of trying to improve upon the beauty that nature, in most cases, has already bestowed. Someone might receive a box of candy from home. When she did, friends suddenly materialized from all directions, friends who proved to be hungry. But the lucky one always seemed happy to share her good fortune. What could be a more natural way for youth to spend their leisure than this? Somehow the age-old river seems to weave a magic spell of romance year after year. If it could only talk, it might tell an interesting story. Its still deep waters reflect many things. Perhaps the peace and contentment of a well-earned rest where one sits undisturbed even by the invasion of sweethearts. Or perhaps it reflects the struggle of decisions to be made, though perhaps struggle is a little over-descriptive. The plans and hopes of romantic dreamers who envision the sharing of a glorious future. Or it may reflect at times a bit of unexpected activity. This seems a reflection of justice too. The river loses a fish to catch a man. At times, groups were organized for a hike into the hills. Here, healthy exercise resulted in healthy appetites, as it usually does. Then, gathering in a group around the open fire, the hikers paused for a moment to sing grace before their meal, and then started to eat with a zest of which only healthy, happy, and hungry youth are capable. And as we ate together, I was made to realize more than ever before that there are many things that add to the joy of eating: happiness and laughter, goodwill, unselfishness, and sharing. When all people can sit around a common fire and mix all these ingredients into the bread of daily life, then world brotherhood will be close at hand. A high point that every student looks forward to is a visit home over the weekend or school holiday. I'll always cherish the memory of the weekend that I spent in a home a few miles from the college. I speak of this visit because there I got an insight into American life that I might have missed had I not gone. The life of an American family upon a farm, located several miles from any town, and depending completely upon the soil for a livelihood. Life on the farm, I discovered, is not easy. In spite of all the modern conveniences of American life, there is still much work to be done. Machinery helps, but there are many jobs that require a strong back and a calloused hand. But then, life on the farm is never dull. Get the point? The work is made easier when each person has his own task and does it without complaining. His might be the outside chores of chopping wood, or bringing the cows into the barn lot where they are fed and watered. Some are to be milked. Straw has to be spread as litter, so that both stalls and cows may be kept clean. Mama Pig gets a nice cool supper, which will in turn soon become a warm supper for her babies so that they can grow fat. Chickens are to be fed and watered, eggs gathered and prepared either for the hatchery or market. It sometimes takes 2 people to find them all. You have to know where to look for them. In a large working family, the women also have jobs to do. To prepare 3 meals a day for a hungry crew requires a lot of time in the hot kitchen for both mother and daughters. In one corner of the kitchen was the old wood-burning stove, always dependable. But as in many modern kitchens, there was also a new electric range. All the food, bounty of nature that it was not taken for granted. Living close to the soil, the family was conscious of God's hand in daily life. Before eating, there was always a moment of thanksgiving. This was a happy family. The ties of devotion were strong. Each member had grown up with a sense of thrift and industry. Each had been taught to take his place in society and to contribute to family and community life. Each was accepted as an individual, and their devotion to each other was broad enough to include the guest within their home. I was accepted as one of their own. The devotion of the family was expressed in other ways too, not only in their work and eating, but also in the way they spent their leisure. When all the children and grandchildren got together, they made a sizable group, and all of them loved to sing. The contentment of the family was expressed in the way the father sat quietly reading his magazine, and the mother sewing at the end of a busy day. The interests of the family were not limited to the home. They participated in the life of the community as well, and they were especially interested in the activity of the church. As the hour of worship approached each Sunday morning, cars came from all directions. The worshippers filed into the church, the wealthy, the poor, the old, the young, and one who was blind and had to depend upon the eyes of her dog. As I entered the door with these people, I could sense immediately their concern for the church and the principles for which it stands. They didn't come empty-handed, bearing only their burdened hearts. They came bearing the gifts they had brought to share with the naked and hungry people of the world, some undoubtedly in my own homeland. Each Sunday morning there was an hour of Bible study in which these people sought to learn God's will for their daily lives and to discriminate between the good and bad in the choices they have to make. Not only did they seek to learn by counsel and a study of God's Word, they also sought to profit by daily experiences. There were those who were ready to share what they had learned. Through their discussions of problems and solutions, they were able to better apply Christian principles to their action. There were also classes for children. Early in life, they were taught the values of Christian living by stories and by the example of the life of Jesus. Here, too, the children were taught that the fatherhood of God embraces all people, that the erected barriers of race, nationality, and creed are man-made and contrary to the will of God. The worship of these people had many aspects, each of them of great value. The voice of the pastor, as he called them to worship, proclaimed the will of God. The listening congregation sought to absorb from the message a strengthening of conviction, an abhorrence of that which is evil, a love for that which is good, a sense of God's presence through their attitude of meditation. But their worship was more than an attitude. It was also an act of participation and expression. The great music played by the blind organist seemed to characterize that we worship not only by sight, but also by touch and feeling. It also indicated that every individual, no matter what his handicap, is able to glorify God. Everyone was inspired to sing the great hymns of the church. The song leader directed with enthusiasm. It seemed rather strange at first to find in America so many different churches, so many different sects. The Church of the Brethren is only one of over 200. But in spite of their differences, these churches have a common purpose, a common faith in one God and one Christ. Sitting in the pew beside these people, I felt united with them in the strong bond of fellowship, a bond that was made even stronger when I later discovered that we held another claim to brotherhood. The Brethren are of European origin. The Church of the Brethren was born in my homeland and was brought to America by those who fled the scourge of war and persecution. Even today, the Brethren believe that war is sin. It is not strange, then, that I should be invited into their homes as a friend. Another expression of worship in which the people participated was that of sharing through the offering service. The people of America are aware that they have been blessed with an abundance of material wealth, and the voice of the church is ever challenging them, both young and old, to share what they have with all people. Of the many acts that made up the worship service, one of the finest was the pastor's call to prayer. In the quietness of the sanctuary, the congregation was called upon to pray in a spirit of gratitude, lest they forget the goodness of God and misuse his blessings to their own shame. In the spirit of humility, lest in their pride they erect a barrier to God and fellow men. In a spirit of repentance for the evils they have allowed to flourish, and in a spirit of dedication, whereby they might offer not only their wealth, but their time and talent to the service of all mankind. Only through such prayer will the seeds of brotherhood be sown, and the kingdom of heaven revealed.